The microphone caught the wet, rattling sound of Councilman Hatcher's breath as he leaned over the flimsy folding table. He was too close, deliberately, aggressively close to the woman standing on the other side. "Maybe if you had a husband to handle the maintenance," Hatcher sneered, his voice amplified by the cheap PA system until it distorted. "The building wouldn't be such an eyesore. A single woman running a commercial property. Perhaps it's just too much for you to manage alone, Miss Reed?" Lydia Reed didn't step back. She didn't shout. She just went still. Her hands, which had been stacking petitions a moment ago, pressed flat against the fake wood grain of the table. Her knuckles turned white. It was the only sign that the insult had landed. She stood there in her worn wool coat, surrounded by the humming fluorescent lights of the municipal center, looking less like a business owner and more like a target. The room, packed with tired residents and bored zoning board members, went dead silent. You could hear the radiator in the corner hissing, a rhythmic, dying sound. My hand found the back of the metal chair before my brain even processed the decision. The legs of the chair screamed across the linoleum floor as I stood up. I didn't think about the optics. I didn't calculate the polling impact. I just moved. I walked down the center aisle of the community center, the heels of my boots striking the floor with a heavy, deliberate cadence that cut through the silence. Hatcher blinked, blinded by the stage lights, squinting into the gloom of the audience. "Who is this?" "We are in session." "Point of order," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried quiet, controlled, and devoid of emotion, and the back row went still. I stopped exactly 3 feet from the table. I kept my hands visible, loose at my sides. I didn't look at Hatcher. I looked at the stenographer, a young woman who had stopped typing, her fingers hovering over the keys as if she was afraid to record what happened next. "Is the councilman's comment regarding Miss Reed's marital status being entered into the official minutes?" I asked. "Or was that an off-the-record personal remark?" The stenographer's eyes darted between me and Hatcher. She didn't move. She looked terrified. Hatcher straightened up, adjusting his tie, a flush creeping up his thick neck. That was merely an observation. A concern for her capacity to maintain the structure. We have standards in this district. It sounded like a condition for zoning compliance, I said. Because if you tie her permit to her personal life, you're abusing the process and it becomes an ethics case, not a hearing. Do you want to restate the deadline, Councilman? For the record, Hatcher swallowed. I saw his eyes flick to the cell phone. Mrs. Higgins was holding up in the front row, the red recording light blinking steadily. He realized, too late, that the room had shifted. He wasn't the predator anymore. The hearing is adjourned, Hatcher stammered, shoving his papers into a leather portfolio with jerky, angry movements. We will reconvene in 2 weeks. Miss Reed, have your compliance paperwork in order, or we shut you down. He marched out the side door, his aides trailing him like nervous shadows. The tension in the room broke, dissolving into the scraping of chairs and the low murmur of neighbors discussing the spectacle. I turned to Lydia. She was staring at me, her brown eyes wide. She looked like she had been holding her breath for an hour. Up close, I could see the fraying on the cuffs of her wool coat and the dark smudge of printer ink on her thumb. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a fighter who was running out of ammunition. Are you safe? I asked. She blinked. Yes, I'm fine. She exhaled, a long, shaky sound that seemed to deflate her posture by an inch. You're the guy from 4B, the one who gets the Wall Street Journal at 5 a.m.? And you're the one who leaves lavender tea bags on the mailboxes, I said. She managed a weak smile. It was fragile, barely there, but it changed her face. He was cornering you, I said. I don't like corners. Lydia began stacking her petitions again. Her hands were trembling now, the adrenaline crash hitting her hard. A sheaf of papers slipped from her stiff fingers and scattered on the dirty linoleum. I knelt immediately. She knelt at the same time. Our hands brushed against the cold floor as we reached for the same document. I've got it, she said quickly, pulling back. Lydia, I said, my voice quiet. I held out the paper, waiting for her to take it. He's not done. He wants the block. He's not just policing noise. He's clearing the way for something bigger. You saw how he looked at the exit? He's scared, which means he's going to come back harder. She took the paper, her fingers brushing mine. Her skin was ice cold. I know, but I don't have the budget for a lawyer, Mr. Clark. So unless you know how to fight a city council with a library card, I'm probably losing my home. I stood up and offered her a hand. She hesitated, looking at my palm like it was a trap, then took it. I pulled her up, keeping the grip firm but brief. I don't know much about library cards, I said, but I know how to kill a bad narrative. She looked at me, really looked at me, searching for the catch. Why would you help me? Because you're my neighbor, I said. And because he used the wrong leverage? The snow had started falling by the time we walked back to the brownstone. It was the heavy, wet kind that clung to eyelashes and muffled the sounds of the city. The streetlights created cones of yellow haze in the gray evening. The city felt empty, abandoned to the cold. We walked in silence. I kept my pace slow, matching hers. She was carrying a heavy box of files, hugging it to her chest like a shield. I could see the strain in her arms, the way she adjusted her grip every few steps. Here, I said, stopping at the stoop of our building. Let me take that. I can manage, she said automatically. It was a reflex, born of years of doing everything alone. I know you can, I said, but you don't have to. May I? She paused. She looked at the box, then at me. She nodded. I took the box. It was heavier than it looked, filled with years of receipts and permits, the paperweight of her life. I held it with one arm and used my other hand to unlock the heavy oak front door. The hallway inside smelled of vanilla and old paper, the scent of her shop on the ground floor rising up through the building. It was a smell I had come to associate with safety over the last 3 weeks, a stark contrast to the stale coffee and ozone smell of the campaign offices I was used to. We walked up the narrow stairs to the 4th floor. The fluorescent light in the hallway buzzed with an irritating flicker, casting long shadows. At her door, she fumbled for her keys. Her hands were still shaking from the cold and the confrontation. I set the box down. I picked up the keys. I didn't hand them back immediately. You're a strategist, she said, leaning against the doorframe. She looked drained. I looked you up when you moved in 3 weeks ago. Cade Clark. You ran the Senate campaign in Ohio. You were the architect. I was, I said. You're 32, she said. The number hung in the air. She was 39. It wasn't a question, just a calibration. People don't retire at 32 unless they broke something. I didn't break anything, I said, looking at the brass number on her door. I just got tired of fixing things for people who didn't care if they stayed fixed. Well, she said, crossing her arms. I care. This building is my life, Cade. The shop is my life. If I lose the permit, I lose the apartment too. I'll be homeless in 14 days. You won't be homeless, I said. We have 14 days. That's a lifetime in politics. We? She asked. You've spoken to me twice. Why are you doing this? I told you. I drink the tea. She stared at me. The tea? The chamomile and lavender. You leave it on the mailboxes every Sunday? I drink it. It's the only thing that helps me sleep. I looked her in the eye. You take care of the building, Lydia. You take care of the neighbors. Someone should take care of the perimeter. She softened then. The tension in her shoulders dropped an inch. I have a strategy meeting tomorrow. 8 a.m. My kitchen. I make terrible coffee, but excellent toast. I'll bring the coffee, I said. Deal. I unlocked her door and pushed it open. Get some sleep. Thank you, Cade, she whispered. I waited until I heard the deadbolt slide home a solid, heavy thunk before I turned to my own door. I walked into my apartment. It was dark, empty, and perfectly silent. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Governor's office. We need to talk. The poll numbers are sliding. I looked at the screen. Then I looked at the wall that separated my apartment from hers. I powered the phone off and tossed it onto the couch. For once, I let the world wait. I had a meeting at 8 a.m. The next morning, Lydia's kitchen looked less like a breakfast nook and more like a crime scene of bureaucracy. Papers covered every surface, the small round table, the counters, even the top of the fridge. The room was cold, The kind of chill that seeps into the walls of old buildings and settles in your bones. I knocked on the open door frame at 7:59 a.m. I held up a stainless steel thermos. Guatemalan roast. Black. Hot. Lydia was wearing an oversized gray sweater that swallowed her hands and black leggings. Her hair was in a messy bun, secured by a pencil. She looked up from a spreadsheet, her eyes tired but alert. "You're on time," she noted. "Strategists are always on time," I said, setting the thermos on a coaster. "May I?" I pointed to the chair opposite her. "Please." I sat down. I didn't start with small talk. I pulled a legal pad from my bag and a pen. "Tell me about Hatcher. What does he want?" Not the stated reason, the real reason. Lydia poured herself a cup of coffee. She wrapped both hands around the mug, savoring the warmth. "He wants the block. A developer, Apex Development, wants to put in luxury condos with retail on the ground floor. Hatcher has been pushing for revitalization for a year. The bookstore is the anchor tenant. If I go, the other leases crumble because of the co-tenancy clauses." "Okay," I said, writing Apex Development on the pad in neat block letters. "So, it's not personal. It's transactional." "That's good. Transactional we can leverage." "It feels personal," she murmured. "He called me a spinster in front of the neighborhood." "He called you vulnerable," I corrected. "He thinks because you're a single woman in her 30s running a low-margin business, you're easy prey." "We're going to be mathematical." I spent the next 2 hours dismantling her panic and replacing it with a plan. I audited her permits. I checked the noise ordinance codes. I found 3 loopholes in the citation Hatcher had filed. I worked with the precision I used to apply to polling data, but this felt different. This wasn't about numbers. It was about a home. Lydia watched me work. "You're good at this," she said quietly. "It's just puzzles," I said, not looking up from the zoning map. "You're the one who built a business that kept a community together for 10 years? That's the hard part." I reached for a red pen to circle a clause, and my hand brushed hers on the table. I froze. It was accidental, barely a graze, but I felt the contact travel up my arm. I pulled my hand back slowly, keeping my eyes on the paper. "Sorry," I said. "It's okay," she said. She didn't pull her hand away immediately. She let it linger near the paper for a second before wrapping it around her mug again. "Clause 14B, I said, my voice a little rougher than I intended. "Grandfathered usage. He can't retroactively apply the new noise ordinance to a business established before 2015. We just need proof of your opening date." "I have the original lease," she said. "Somewhere." She stood up and went to a metal filing cabinet in the corner. It was jammed shut. She yanked on it, frustrated. "Damn it. The track is bent. It always sticks when it gets cold." "Let me," I said, standing up. I walked over. I didn't crowd her. I stopped a foot away. "May I?" She nodded. "Be my guest." "It hates me." I knelt down, inspecting the metal track. It was misaligned. The roller popped out of the groove. I didn't force it. I used the flat of my hand to apply pressure to the side panel, lifting the drawer slightly while guiding it back onto the roller. It clicked into place with a satisfying snap. "Try it now," I said, standing up and stepping back to give her room. She opened the drawer smoothly. She looked at me, a flush rising on her neck. "Do you fix everything you touch?" "I try to leave things better than I found them," I said. She found the lease and handed it to me. Her fingers brushed mine again, deliberate this time as she passed the paper. "So, what's next? We show this to Hatcher?" "No," I said, taking the document. "Never give your enemy the ammunition until you're ready to fire. We wait for the public hearing, but first, we need to inoculate the neighborhood against the rumors he's about to start. How do we do that?" "We hold an event," I said. "A meet the owner night. But not just for books. We make it a town hall. We let them see you. We let them see the books. We make the community the shield. And what do? I manage the door," I said. "And I make sure nobody corners you again." The campaign began. For 2 weeks, we were a machine. I handled the logistics, the permits for the event, the press releases to the local paper. Lydia handled the people. She was brilliant with them. I watched her from the periphery of the shop, seeing how she remembered every customer's name, how she recommended books that seemed to heal people's bad days. She was the heart. I was the ribcage protecting it. But Hatcher didn't wait for the 2 weeks to be up. On Thursday, I was working in the back of the shop when the door chimed. A man in a city windbreaker walked in, clipboard in hand. An inspector. He didn't browse. He walked straight to the fire exit sign in the back. "Miss Reed," he called out. Lydia came out from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" "Fire marshal inspection," the man said, not looking at her. "We had a complaint about blocked egress." Lydia paled. "We passed inspection 3 months ago. Complaints mandate a spot check," he said, already writing something on his clipboard. "This aisle is too narrow. That stack of books is a trip hazard. I'm going to have to issue a citation." Lydia looked at me, panic flaring in her eyes. A citation now would ruin our grandfathered argument. It was a targeted strike. I closed my laptop. I walked over. "Officer," I said, "I'm looking at the International Fire Code. Section 1011. The minimum egress width for an occupancy of this size is 36 inches. I pulled a laser measure from my pocket. I'd started carrying it since the project began. I placed it on the shelf and shot the beam to the opposite wall. 42 inches, I read. I held the device up so he could see the display. And the trip hazard is a display on a fixed plinth, which is code compliant under section 304. The inspector stopped writing. He looked at the laser measure, then at me. "Who are you?" "I'm the building manager," I lied smoothly. "And I'm recording the measurements for our records. Do you want to remeasure, or should we call the chief marshal down here to interpret the code together?" The inspector glared at me. He knew Hatcher had sent him on a fishing expedition, and he knew I had caught him. He snapped his clipboard shut. "Make sure those boxes in the back are moved," he grumbled. He tore the top sheet off his clipboard, a warning, not a citation, and handed it to Lydia. Then he walked out. Lydia stared at the warning slip. Her hands were shaking. "He sent him," she whispered. "Hatcher sent him." "Yes," I said, "and we stopped him. This time," she said. She looked exhausted. "Cade, I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting." "I know," I said. "Go upstairs. Take a break. I'll finish the inventory." "You don't work here," she said weakly. "I do today," I said. "Go." I watched her walk up the stairs, her shoulders slumped. I hated Hatcher then. Not professionally. Personally. I spent the next 3 hours organizing the back room. The shop was freezing. The building's heating system was ancient, and the radiator in the back office clanked like a dying engine. At 10 p.m., I went into the back office to pack up. Lydia was there. She had come down at some point, probably to work on the accounts, but she had fallen asleep at the desk. Her head was resting on her arms, surrounded by ledgers. The radiator in the corner was hissing and banging, a constant assault on the silence. I walked over. I knelt down by the radiator. The valve was loose, vibrating against the pipe. I found a wrench in the small toolbox I'd brought down. I tightened the packing nut, slowly, carefully, until the hissing stopped. Then I used a shim of cardboard to wedge the pipe away from the wall bracket, silencing the banging. The room went quiet. I stood up. I looked at Lydia. She was shivering slightly in her sleep. I took her heavy wool coat from the rack near the door. I walked over and draped it over her, covering her shoulders. I didn't touch her skin. I just tucked the coat around the chair, creating a cocoon of warmth. I grabbed a sticky note from the desk and wrote, "Radiator fixed. Go home when you wake up. C." I left it on the ledger next to her hand. I let myself out the back door, locking it behind me. The Meet the Owner event was 3 days away. We were ready, or so I thought. The night of the event, the shop was packed. It was a triumph. The neighbors were there, drinking cider, buying books, signing a letter of support for the zoning board. Mrs. Higgins was holding court in the mystery section, telling everyone within earshot that she had lived on this block since 1974, and Lydia was the best thing to happen to it. Lydia was glowing. She wore a deep green dress that made her look regal. She was laughing, looking freer than I'd ever seen her. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from my media monitoring software. Local blog. Bookstore or nuisance. Neighbors. Allege unauthorized late-night activity at Reed Books. My stomach dropped. I tapped the link. It wasn't just a noise complaint. It was a smear. Anonymous sources claiming illegal gatherings, fire hazards, and strangers entering at all hours. It was carefully worded to avoid a lawsuit, but designed to destroy her reputation with the conservative town council. I looked across the room. Lydia was smiling. She didn't know. I had to kill this. Now, I slipped out the back door into the snowy alley. I pulled up the blog's About page. I didn't call the editor directly. That was a rookie move. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for a senior partner at the law firm that represented the blog's parent company, a contact from my Senate race days. I dialed. "This is Cade Clark," I said when he picked up. "I'm looking at a libelous article on one of your client's sites regarding Lydia Reed." "Cade?" The voice was surprised. "I thought you retired." "I did," I said, my voice dropping to that lethal calm I reserved for nuclear disasters. "But I'm coming out of retirement for 5 minutes to tell you that if this story isn't scrubbed, I'm filing a suit for defamation and tortious interference. And I'm going to depose the editor about his relationship with Councilman Hatcher." Silence on the line. Then, "Send me the link." "You have 5 minutes," I said. "Or I start drafting the filing." I hung up. I waited in the cold, watching the snow fall on the dumpsters. 4 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Error 404. Page not found. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I turned to go back inside. Lydia was standing in the doorway. She was holding her phone. Her face was ashen. "Lydia," I said, stepping toward her. "Did you see it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Before they took it down?" Mrs. Higgins showed me. The headline. "It's gone," I said. "I handled it." "You handled it?" She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "How?" "I called the lawyer who insures them. I leveraged a past contact." She stepped back. "Who are you, Cade?" "Really? You're not just a retired consultant. You have these numbers. You have this power. You destroy people with phone calls." "I used it to protect you," I said. "Did you?" She hugged herself, shivering. "Or is this just another campaign? Am I just the candidate you're trying to get elected? Because it feels like you're managing me. You're fixing my radiator, you're fixing my permits, you're fixing the press. But you haven't told me why. Because watching you fight this alone is killing me." The words ripped out of me. They hung in the cold air between us. Lydia stopped. She stared at me. I lowered my voice, forcing myself to breathe. "I care about you. Lydia. Not the shop. You. I can't watch him bully you. She shook her head. "I can't do this. I can't be someone's project. Everyone who has ever helped me wanted something, Cade. They wanted the building. Or they wanted me. And when they realized I was just a woman with a messy life and a failing business, they left. I am not them," I said. "I need space," she said. "Please, just, let me handle the town hall. Alone." She turned and went back inside, closing the heavy steel door. I stood in the alley. I wanted to punch the brick wall. Instead, I went upstairs to my apartment. I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk. When her door stayed shut, I didn't knock again. I let the silence be my proof that I respected her boundary. But I didn't stop working. I printed out the entire email chain I had uncovered between Hatcher and Apex Development. The financial records. The smoking gun. I put it all in a plain manila folder. I walked into the hallway. I knelt in front of her door. I didn't knock. I didn't try the handle. On the front, I wrote a sticky note. Plan B. Just in case. You don't need me to win this. You just need the truth. For 3 days, we lived in silence. I heard her moving around next door. I heard her pacing. On the day of the town hall, I was walking to my car when her door opened. Lydia stepped out. She looked tired, but her chin was up. She was holding the manila folder. "You weren't going to come," she said. "You asked for space," I said. "I read the file," she said. You found the money trail. It was sloppy, I said. Hatcher is arrogant. She looked at the folder, then at me. You did all this, and then you just gave it to me. The credit doesn't save the shop, I said. You do. She took a step toward me. Can I ask you a favor? Anything. Drive me. I don't want to walk into that room alone. I want my neighbor there. I smiled. Get in. The town hall was a war zone. Hatcher had mobilized his base. The room was hot, loud, and hostile. But the back rows were filled with Lydia's customers. I stood by the side wall, arms crossed. I was just a spectator today. Lydia walked to the podium. Hatcher smirked at her. Miss Reed, I trust you have your noise mitigation plan? Lydia placed the manila folder on the podium. She opened it. She didn't look at Hatcher. She looked at the audience. I don't have a noise mitigation plan, she said into the microphone. Her voice was steady. Because the noise isn't the problem. She held up a piece of paper. This is a bank transfer record, she said. From Apex Development to a consulting firm owned by Councilman Hatcher's wife. Dated 3 days before the first complaint was filed against my shop. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the space. Hatcher stood up. That is a lie. That is private. It is public record, Lydia said, her voice rising, cutting him off. You aren't rezoning the district for the neighbors, Councilman. You're selling it. You tried to bully me because you thought I was weak. You thought a single woman would fold. She looked directly at him. I am not folding. The room erupted. Reporters surged forward. Mrs. Higgins started clapping, and soon the whole room was on its feet. Hatcher looked like a rat trapped in a spotlight. He grabbed his briefcase and pushed his way out the side exit. I watched Lydia. She wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking at me. She gave me a tiny nod. We did it. I nodded back. After the chaos died down, after the police chief promised an investigation, after the neighbors hugged her, we walked out to the parking lot. The snow was falling again. It was quiet. Lydia leaned against my car. She looked up at the sky, letting the snowflakes land on her face. He ran, she said. Hatcher ran. He knows it's over, I said. She turned to me. You saved me, Cade. No, I said. I just handed you the ammo. You pulled the trigger. She shook her head. No! You saved me. Not the shop. Me. You showed up. You stayed when I pushed you away. You fixed the radiator. She laughed, a tear slipping down her cheek. God, the radiator. It's so quiet now. I like quiet, I said. She stepped closer. She looked over my shoulder and saw Mrs. Higgins walking toward us with a group of neighbors. Lydia didn't pull away. She reached out and took my arm, linking it with hers. Mrs. Higgins, Lydia called out. The older woman bustled over. Lydia, you were magnificent. She looked at me, eyebrows raised. And who is this handsome young man? Lydia looked at me. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. This is Cade, Lydia said, squeezing my arm. He's with me. Mrs. Higgins beamed. Well, it's about time. After the neighbors left, Lydia turned back to me. My neighbor asked me once why I was still single, she said softly. I didn't have an answer then. I think I was just waiting for someone who asked permission. She looked at my lips, then up at my eyes. Cade, she whispered. Why are you still single? Because I was waiting for you, I said. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. I lifted my hand and brushed a snowflake from her cheek. My thumb lingered on her jawline. May I? I asked. Yes, she breathed. I stepped in and wrapped my arms around her. I held her tight, pulling her into the warmth of my coat. She buried her face in my neck. We stood there in the falling snow, two people who had stopped fighting the world and started fighting for each other. Come upstairs, she whispered into my coat. I have tea. I'd like that, I said. We walked back to the car, hand in hand. The investigation would start tomorrow. The press would call. But for tonight, the only strategy was tea, silence, and the woman who lived next door. You know, we spend so much time protecting ourselves, building walls, drafting strategies, checking the exits. But I learned that true safety isn't about being invulnerable. It's about finding the person who treats your trust like a rare book, handling it with clean hands and reading every page. Love isn't a merger, it's a sanctuary. If you liked this story, please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.